Okay. Russia begins civilian evacuation from Kherson.
Welcome to BBC World News. The new commander of Russian forces in Ukraine says the Russian army is preparing to evacuate civilians from the city of Kherson, the first big city to fall to Russia at the start of its invasion of Ukraine in February. Ukrainian forces have been steadily retaking territory near Kherson, which is a strategically important port, giving access to the Black Sea. Well, elsewhere in Ukraine, more than 1,000 towns and villages are now without power after Russian air strikes. President Zelensky says 30% of Ukraine's power stations have been destroyed in the past 8 days. Sylvia Lennon-Spence reports.
Children, the elderly, even family pets, waiting for their turn to be taken to safety. This is the southern city of Kherson, occupied by Russian forces since February. Civilians there have begun to leave amid warnings it could become a bloody new front line.
For the last 2 weeks, we have been insisting on evacuating part of the Kherson region. I ask you to interpret my words seriously. We won't abandon the city and will stand until the end.
Kherson is a crucial strategic and symbolic target for Ukraine's government. And for the past few weeks, Ukrainian forces have been gaining ground. The man charged with halting this fight back is General Sergei Surovikin.
Just the most thumb motherfucker you could find, by the way. Just the leader of the
Nicknamed
thumb
General
army.
Armageddon, he was recently appointed Russia's top commander in Ukraine. But in his first televised interview since taking the role, he seemed to offer a rare acknowledgement of Russian difficulties.
The situation in the area of the special military operation can be described as tense. The enemy...
My man's still saying special military operation. Respect. I mean, at a certain point, you got to slip up, right? It's wild that these motherfuckers never do. Straight up. Like, how? How are you so committed to the bit, dude? These guys are all Upright Citizens Brigade improv masters, okay? Special military operation is going well. And also, we're just evacuating people with the special military operation. Wild to consider how it has been this fucking long. Aren't your mods a former cops in the chat? Cops are necessary just like mods. Yeah, I'm not a fucking like abolish the police department across the board Andy, okay? Shut the fuck up. I'm a cop defender because they're necessary. Yeah, shut up, idiot. We're quite literally talking about like people doing unjustifiable things and then responding by saying, well, I'll lose my fucking job if I don't.
is not abandoning its attempts to attack Russian troop positions.
Facing such staunch resistance, Moscow has identified a new objective away from the front lines: the devastation of Ukraine's electricity supply. More than 1,000 towns and villages across the country are without power, and millions face the prospect of a freezing winter.
It's scary. I don't know how to prepare. Seems like we will be sitting without light and in cold.
Moscow seems intent on causing maximum chaos to achieve its goals, which means civilians and critical infrastructure are now squarely in the firing line. Sylvia Lennon-Spence, BBC News.
Well, let's talk to BBC's Hugo Bashega, who's in Kyiv. And before we talk about the attacks that are going on across Ukraine, Hugo, and the impact, what is the importance and the significance of what's going on in that southern port city of Kherson, which Russia took so early in its invasion?
It's very significant, Karen. This is one of the largest Ukrainian cities in Russian hands, and the Ukrainians are carrying out this counteroffensive to retake Kherson. And in the last few weeks, the Ukrainians have recaptured dozens of villages near Kherson. And now I think the expectation is that the Ukrainian forces will continue to move along the Dnipro River and try to retake this very strategic city. Now, it's believed that between 15,000 to 20,000 Russian forces are positioned in that part of the country, and there is the threat that they could become encircled and supply lines could be cut off. So it is very significant what is happening there, and we're hearing those reports from local authorities announcing the evacuation of civilians from the Kherson region, and dozens of tens of thousands of people live in that area. So it is something that we've been watching very closely for weeks now. It seems that there is a news blackout in that area imposed by the Ukrainians, so it's really difficult to independently confirm what's happening there. But we're hearing reports from Russian officials and also from Ukrainian authorities there suggesting that fighting is intensifying, and that could be the next chapter in this Ukrainian counteroffensive.
That figure of 30% of Ukraine's power stations hit by Russian attacks in just the last 8 days. Hugo, that really is a startling figure for a country the size of Ukraine. As winter arrives, how is Ukraine going to handle this?
Yeah, this is a major concern here because the Russians have been attacking critical civilian infrastructure across the country. We heard yesterday from officials who said thousands of towns and villages across the country were without power. Rolling blackouts are happening in parts of the country. And a senior official yesterday went on television to tell people that winter is going to be hard. And residents are being told to reduce their electricity consumption during the night. People are buying generators. So I think there is a huge level of concern here that the system may not cope as a result of those attacks. As you said, a third of this country's power stations have been destroyed, according to President Zelensky. And I think this is going to be a major issue in the months ahead. It gets incredibly cold here in Ukraine, and obviously a major concern that power, water and heating services could be disrupted as a result of those attacks. And the Ukrainians are saying that this is the way Russia is responding to military setbacks on the battlefield, by attacking civilian targets and civilian infrastructure in cities across the country, including the capital, Kyiv, a city away from the front lines. But I think what is interesting is that if you talk to people here, there is no sense of panic, Karen. I think people are really angry that, again, civilian sites and civilians have become the target in this war.
Hugo, thank you. Hugo Bashega in.
I mean, civilians have been the target from the jump. Civilians are always targeted in the war. Always.
For more on the
They will always be the victims of war. Always. That's just how it is. And what Russia is doing is like extra bad. That's the difference. Like, you always have civilian casualties in war, no matter what you do, no matter how careful you are. There's no such thing as like a careful war, right? That's why we say war is bad across the board. That's why I'm anti-war across the board. But there is also, it can only get worse. It can go from bad to horrifyingly bad, right? There is no good. There's no good in that. And when we talk about states waging war against other states, Russia is becoming increasingly more unhinged. They were insanely unhinged from the jump, and it's only gotten worse. And my fear is that these evacuations that are happening at the precipice of an escalation. I hope that is not the case, but I am very fearful of that reality.